This is Help Wanted, the show that makes your work work for you. I'm Jason Pfeiffer, editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine.
And I'm money expert Nicole Lappin. On Tuesdays, Jason and I answer the helpline and help callers solve their work problems.
And on Thursdays, I give you one way to improve your work and build a career or company you love.
And it starts now.
You want to be great all the time, but you are not. Sorry. Some days you just aren't as smart, funny, or exceptional as you'd like. Your ideas seem mediocre. Your efforts were a little meh. You know it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. But you beat yourself up over it anyway. A few weeks ago, I had one of those days. I wrote about it in my newsletter, and so many people sent me these wonderful responses, sharing their own struggles with imperfection. I loved an admission that came from an amateur DJ. They wrote me, quote, "Whenever I fail to make the perfect set or the perfect transition, I have trouble sleeping that night or I beat myself up for hours, even though everyone in the audience enjoyed the party without noticing my mistake." End quote. Yeah, I've been there. We all have. It's frustrating. We didn't fail per se. There was no disaster. We just didn't live up to our high standards, and now we can't let it go. Today's podcast is for people like that. I have two mental tricks to help you move on. I call them downward thinking and the grading curve. They've helped me bounce back from my imperfect moments, and I think they can help you too. So let's go through them. Tactic number one, downward thinking. Let's say that you're that DJ I mentioned a minute ago. You fail to do things perfectly. Then you go home and obsess over it, imagining all the better decisions you could have made. You are doing something called counterfactual thinking. In other words, you're creating alternate realities in your head and then wishing those alternate realities were true. I wanted to know, how do you snap yourself out of that? So I called an expert who studies this stuff. He is a social psychologist at Wake Forest named John Petruccelli. And here was his advice. He told me, this is going to sound a little funny, but the trick is to consider additional alternatives, to consider other counterfactuals. That's what John told me. Because here's the thing. There are actually two kinds of counterfactuals. The first is called upward counterfactuals, where we imagine how things could have been better. That is our usual mode. But then there is also downward counterfactuals. That's where we imagine how things could have gone worse. Here's an amazing study which shows the impact of these two modes. So scientists have studied Olympic medalists to see how happy or upset they are when receiving their medals. And the answer is that the silver medalists are always the least happy. Why? Well, because the dynamic looks like this. The gold winner, the person who was number one, is thinking, I'm number one, which is great. Silver is thinking, I could have been number one. And so they're not as happy with their station. And bronze is thinking, I could have been number 4. I might not be here at all. In other words, the silver medalist is thinking upward about how they could have gotten gold. The bronze medalist is thinking downward about how they might not have medaled at all. One feels deficient. The other feels fortunate. That's why John Petruccelli gave me his advice. We cannot easily turn off counterfactual thinking, so you might as well fight it with more counterfactual thinking. If you're stuck imagining all the ways things could have gone better, well, try imagining all the ways it could have gone worse, because that was an option too. You could have flopped. Things could have been worse, but they weren't. Now, here's my second mental trick, the grading curve. Whenever you do something, you're really experiencing two things at once. You know what you aspire to do, and then you see what you actually do. And unfortunately, we don't always do what we aspire to do. That's what kills us. So remember this. Your audience did not see both of those things. Your aspirations are invisible to them. All they saw is what you actually did, which means that they're not comparing it against anything. They don't know the joke you forgot to tell or that great point you didn't make. They don't know the perfect transition that you missed in that DJ set. Hell, they may not even know what a perfect transition is. Remember the grading curve from school when teachers would bump students' scores up? That's kind of what's happening here, and it looks like this. Your B+ is someone else's A+. Your B is someone else's A. Your C is someone else's B. When you're feeling down, it is helpful to see things through other people's eyes. Pause to ask yourself, what did other people actually see or hear? List it out if you must. For example, I recently went on a morning TV show and delivered a meh performance. It wasn't great. On my way home, I kept obsessing over the missed opportunities. My delivery could have been sharper, my on-air banter could have been funnier, and did I ramble on that second question? I even texted the show's host to ask if I did okay. Her reply was kind. "You're better than you think," she said. That helped me step back and imagine what people actually saw. I made a list in my head. Number 1, they saw a guy being friendly and warm. Number 2, they saw a guy who made some good points. Number 3, they saw a guy who looked calm and confident. Meanwhile, here's what they did not see. Number 1, they did not see the things I meant to say but didn't. Number 2, they did not see the other way I could have answered that question. Number 3, they did not see a guy nervously obsessing on the way home. Was it the best TV segment they've ever seen? No, but nobody expected that, and nobody was promised that. My definition of success was too big for the moment. It's time to be okay with being okay. We have amazing days. We have terrible days. But most of our days are somewhere in the middle. They're just fine. We passed the test. We did the thing. We made it. Let's give ourselves credit for that. The middle is its own kind of success. The middle means we didn't destroy everything. The middle means we showed up and learned. The middle means we get another shot tomorrow. And don't forget, other people might not even think we were in the middle. They might think we were great, or more likely, they might not be thinking about us at all. Imagine that DJ at the turntables. Now look 20 feet away. Find a couple dancing to the music. They're having a great time. They're going to go home tonight and feel good, and they're going to think that DJ did an A+ job, and they'll never know or care what that DJ didn't do, because all they care about is what the DJ did do. Greatness is more achievable than you think, and that is always worth remembering. And that comes from my newsletter. It's called One Thing Better. Each week, one way to be more successful and satisfied and build a career or company that you love. I write them and they come out in an email because that's what a newsletter is. and then I read them here on Help Wanted, sometimes days, sometimes weeks later. So you can certainly stay tuned to Help Wanted and you'll get something like this every Thursday. But if you want to get them in your inbox, get them a little earlier, have another way to read and consider, well, then you just go to onethingbetter.email. That is the web address, onethingbetter.email. Just plug it into a browser, onethingbetter.email. Was this podcast episode perfect? Did I do everything exactly as I'd like? No. You know what, though? You didn't notice, and I'm not going to obsess over it. Help Wanted is a production of Money News Network. Help Wanted is hosted by me, Jason Pfeiffer.
And me, Nicole Lappin. Our executive producer is Morgan Lavoie. If you want some help, email our helpline at helpwanted@moneynewsnetwork.com for the chance to have some of your questions answered on the show. And follow us on Instagram at Money News and TikTok at Money News Network for exclusive content and to see our beautiful faces. And maybe a little dance.
Oh, I didn't sign up for that.
All right, well, talk to you soon.